All right, welcome in, y'all. Thank you for joining us. We are in beautiful Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, just outside of Madison, Wisconsin, at a rugby complex, watching a huge matchup, DC Shadow versus New York Gridlock. And there's going to be a lot of stories we're going to see tonight. I'm Emily Langland. I'm here with two amazing PUL players with
Erin Schrader
and Annie Shriver.
And we're going to bring you the game today, and we're excited to call it.
Thanks for being with us.
All right, both teams are set to get started right away. It is a balmy 80+ degrees out with a nice, huge sun factor that they're going to have to navigate.
It's true. There's not a lot of wind out here. I saw in the weather report that it's only about 5 to 7 miles an hour. So there may be some gusts. This is always a factor in a stadium, but there's some pretty open, there's no structure on either side. So the wind should pass through pretty easily.
So pretty typical Midwestern hot day. Let's see how it goes down.
As we get rolling, I wanted to mention as well that in the spirit of Premier Ultimate League's mission to achieve equity in the sport of ultimate, as we have the privilege to come together here in Madison, we want to acknowledge that the rights and freedoms of many Americans continue to come under threat. There are challenges to the lives, self-determination, and basic safety of many groups of people, most notably the transgender community and immigrant communities, at risk of deportation. Globally, humanitarian crises imperil the human rights of the people of Gaza, Congo, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And beyond these situations, many other groups face attack based on their identities and beliefs. As we bear witness to these many tragedies, we must come together to stand up for justice and the collective liberation of all people. Out of respect for those seeking the liberated future, if you feel moved, we welcome you in a moment of silence together.
Okay, and we are underway. DC starting on offense, New York on defense.
Annie, what are some things that we should look out for today with these two? I know you've gotten to play on the East Coast. Some of these players might be familiar also with playing against them as a Monarch. What are some things that we should keep an eye out for?
Well, something that I'm excited to see in this game, we see as DC comes out with a clean hold to open it up, is a matchup between two teams that actually play different stylistically in some ways, but similar styles in other ways. New York and DC both tend to play predominantly person defense. They also often play vert stack, although Shadow just came out in some kind of side stack or host stack off of the pull play. The difference is DC is a team that's known for their depth. They tend to run a 3-line rotation where rather than having a set O-line and a set D-line, they rotate through their lines based on the situation, the score, which players they want on the field at a certain time. New York, by contrast, tends to be a more set O-line, D-line, a little bit stricter in that way. New York also has some superstar players leading the league in various statistical categories, whereas DC tends to rely more on their depth. So it'll be interesting to see that clash of styles today. We are about to get our first look at New York's O-line.
All right, yeah, it looks like a nice big pull, well past the brick mark, centered right off, and moved immediately to the break side.
One thing to note, Vale Cardenas, who just caught the disc, she's wearing the yellow hat for Gridlock, is a phenomenal player who has only played one game so far this season with Gridlock. She played in their first game, which was against Philadelphia in April, but has not played in any game since then. It'll be interesting to see how Gridlock incorporates her into this game, having her play her second game with them of the season in their most important game so far.
Looks like we have Krebs kind of isolated in space here, looked off by Gina. Oh, in the first turn of the game, DC takes possession of the disc.
And the person who got that block is Ashley Genoa, and that is my player to watch for DC. Not only has she played every single DC Shadow game, just huge in stats, but also brings a ton of energy to her team. Their game against Raleigh, she had a huge block that then evolved into a huge layout score, and that really set the tone for their huge breaks and then bringing that win home. So keep an eye out on Ashley.
Okay, we got another turnover here.
We have Halavati with the D. We're getting New York's O-line with their second opportunity to score. Looks like right now they have Cartagena and Cardenas back. An interesting note, Jolie Krebs, one of our players to watch for New York, is downfield right now. New York coming out in a vert stack. And Finley with the disc on the sideline resets to DeJesus, the league leader in goals. DeJesus to Cardenas, who's looking deep for Finley. And that disc trails just out of bounds.
You can just feel the pressure of this semifinal. Both teams are just already launching it, showing their deep spaces, just ready to grit it out. I mean, Marge Walker had a huge layout D-bid. Both teams are just putting it all on the line. They want that final, they want that championship, and they are so close.
And a fun note about Marge Walker, who just picked up on the sideline. Marge is actually a Madison native, so this is a homecoming game of sorts for her. It's exciting to see her back in Wisconsin, playing with a chance to win this semi and advance to the PUL Championship game.
Great read there by Ellen Mueller. Come down with that one. And DC's right on the doorstep. There they go. They find Mueller again. Nice work. DC's up 2-0.
And it'll be interesting to see how New York responds in this situation. Gridlock is no stranger to close games. 4 of their 6 games this season have been decided by 1 point. They have won 3 of those games, so 75% win rate on those close games. This is a situation that they are familiar with. Shadow, on the other hand, is familiar with being in the driver's seat. They have had an incredibly dominant regular season. Their closest game was a 19-15 win over Radiance. Their next closest game, they won by a margin of 9. Their point differential on the season is a plus 63. So they are used to being in the driver's seat. We will see if that continues this game or if Gridlock is able to steady the ship a little bit, keep this game closer.
Excited to see how New York responds here.
And we'll see, it looks like a pretty similar line for New York as the line that just played. Coming up, Cartagena fields the pull, centers to Cardenas. Looks like we have Finley back also. Finley striking out. Looks like DC is a little bit loose to start downfield, but now playing a pretty tight person defense, clogging up the space. Cardenas resets to Cartagena. Some stagnation downfield for Gridlock. It looks like they're struggling a little bit to figure out how to get the disc moving, but Cardenas gets open and then gets hand blocked by Romero Pena.
Very fortunate for DC. There was a receiver streaking down the end zone line with space.
And that is Jordan Sorensen with the excellent deep cut. A good look to the end zone, but with the pressure from the Gridlock players in the area, New York is able to get it back. Quickly get the disc moving. They hit Junst. Looks for Cartagena, but the disc is just out of bounds.
And we do see both teams playing vert stack here. Gridlock did initially come down in more of a host stack, but then collapsed to vert. It's interesting. I think we'll see both teams stay in vert for the rest of this point.
Finley picking up for New York. Getting break side right away, not able to hit Junst. Instead hits Cartagena on the dump cut. Cartagena looks downfield, and this, again, like the last possession, seems like New York is struggling a little bit to get their downfield motion going. But of course, as soon as I say that, DeJesus with the under to gain yards. Get upfield, resets to Cartagena.
The commenter curse.
Of course.
Yeah, the pressure here from DC is high. There's a lot of high pressure and close marks. Tough to find space.
Ooh.
And they find it. There we have Ellie Youngst catching a goal.
Solancha, cheers to New York on that one.
There we go.
Junst is the PUL league leader in receiving yards. Definitely a very dynamic player to watch downfield. It'll be exciting to see her as she settles into this game, to see if Gridlock can hit her downfield and use her speed, athleticism, and timing to generate big plays, gain a lot of yards, and score goals.
The crowd is already starting to shout out Marge Walker's name. You can tell they are happy about her homecoming. And Marge is handling it very stoically, but with a touch of awkwardness, with a thumbs up towards the crowd. So good to see. Welcome back, Marge. We missed you.
Will be our second look at DC's O-line and New York's D-line, although I guess I will say again, DC does not run a strict O-line, D-line system, so this is our second look at DC on offense, but not necessarily the same players or the same look. Pull comes up from Cassie Brown.
This looks like a pull play setup, stacking on the side.
Flores hits Kat Ritzman. Ritzman to Smith. Smith looking upfield for Claire France, who catches under quite a bit of pressure.
Yeah, that was about chest-high layout.
You can feel it's a big game. The pressure is going to be high all game. These are two teams that tend to play person-to-person defense. And I'm excited to see the way that they challenge each other and put pressure on these throws. Looks like we're coming in off a contested foul. France with the disc on the sideline.
Coming on three.
You're inside. When you're ready, go. Stepped off and inside. Stepped off inside. Stepped off inside. High hands, up. Yes.
France resets to Smalling, who hits Smith. Smith looking towards the end zone. Resets again to Smalling. Resets again to Smith. We have a pretty classic end zone set right now with the handlers working up front, leading to a DC score.
Man, speaking of scores, DC has had 138 scores this season. That's nuts. And then another fact that I thought was really interesting is 71 of them were breaks. So they're actually scoring more breaks than not. Like, they're talented.
Yeah, once you get that D-line out there, they might just keep rolling.
Again, a reminder that New York is incorporating Valle Cardenas. In addition to that, New York has brought small rosters to most of their games this season. The PUL allows a roster of up to 27. The largest roster that New York has had at any game so far is 17. Today they have 20, so it's a little bit bigger than their normal. But it means that players are settling into different roles than they might have played before. With that in mind, it'll be interesting to see as we get farther and farther into this game. Does the New York O-line settle into players having a stronger sense of what role they're going to play with this group of people in this game? Do we start to see smoother movement as that happens? Or do we see Shadow continue to put the pressure on, get to know those players who they're seeing, and continue to take away some of those downfield options? We have Cardenas with the disc in the middle. He hits Finley. Finley looking downfield. Cartagena with yards of space. Continues to Halavity. Halavity with a big pump fake looking for Yoon Steep, but resets to Finley. He hits Cardenas, who's going to hit Yoonst on the far side. New York doing an excellent job swinging the disc side to side to open up new spaces and new angles for their cutters. Yoonst around to Krebs. Then a hand block from Amanda Murphy. We got Marge Walker picking up the disc. Walker hits an around to Jess O, looking downfield. O continues up to Mueller. Mueller resets to O. O with the disc in the middle. Ashley Gentilette catches it on the open side and then takes a big shot upfield. Amanda Murphy guarded by Valle Cardenas, who catches the disc, but it looks as if there is a call on the field.
Did look like quite a bit of contact there in the end zone. Hard to say who initiated or if it might just be incidental.
And those who are familiar with the PUL will recognize the folks downfield in the green shirts as observers. The PUL does not have refs making all of the active calls. The observers do make some active calls, like if the disc is in or out of bounds or if the disc is up or down. However, on fouls, players make those calls. They have a chance to resolve them. And then if those calls are not resolved within about 10 seconds, the observer steps in and offers their perspective or offers their help. In this case, the disc is staying with Murphy, who has the disc right on the goal line.
Observer calls the disc down. The hasty pass there just going a little too low.
Oh, and an immediate deep shot from Cardenas looking for Krebs. It's a beautiful throw that sits in space. Krebs has plenty of time to run onto it. Krebs then hits Halavati on the sideline. Halavati back to Krebs. Krebs to Cartagena.
Looks like the disc was stripped there. No contest. Disc will stay with Gina.
And Cartagena picking up, it looks like about 15, maybe 20 yards out of the end zone with Krebs in the backfield.
Tight handler, D. That was great.
Credit to Jackie Wan. Jolie Krebs is a hard person to guard. It is impressive to put that much pressure on her. With Cardenas with the quick scoober to Finley.
Gotta love the scoobs.
And New York is back within one.
We've got about 3 minutes left in the first quarter. In the PUL, there are 4 quarters, each of 12 minutes of play. The clock will stop between points, but won't stop on calls or anything like that. And at the end of the first 3 quarters, whichever team is in possession when the clock reaches 0 will retain possession until they either score or turn the disc over. The fourth quarter is the only one where there's more of a buzzer beater scenario. Once the clock reaches 0, the game is over.
And I mean, this season especially, it seems so many overtime matchups, so many buzzer beaters. I know the Monarchs had several games that went to overtime, so you know, you don't want to wish it on the players. That's such a high pressure situation, but as somebody watching the game, it's always been really exciting this season.
For sure. And New York, familiar with the overtime rules, having just played their last regular season game into overtime against Indy Red. Gridlock on the pole.
This pole went high and floated just before the brick mark. Disc in the hands of Smith, who throws it deep.
Smith hits Wallace. That's a beautiful throw with exactly the right shape to put it in a space where the defender cannot get there. Looks like the defender, Sam Harris, called a foul. It's like an uncontested foul. Disc is going to stay with France right in front of the end zone.
It's looking a bit like a backhand force here.
And a great cut by Kat Ritzman right up the line. France gets it into that space to give DC back their 2-goal lead.
The Discraft Ultrastar is the official disc of the Premier Ultimate League. Discraft, the world leader in disc sports.
All right, we have New York coming out on offense. Aaron, I'm curious about what you've been seeing so far from the New York O-line. Is there anything that you are expecting from them on this point? Anything that they've been looking to so far?
Yeah, I think you were talking about this earlier. They're very good at creating that horizontal motion in their vert stack. If they're not seeing things downfield, they'll quickly switch the field by swinging it all the way around. One person to watch for is Jolie Krebs. The disc just seems to find Jolie Krebs. She has the most touches in the league with almost 400 touches prior to this game, so she might have hit 400 already. She has 24 assists and has played 81 offensive points, which is the most in the league. Here they are. Yep.
Quick look to De Jesus, who's up to Junst. Junst on the sideline, finding Cardenas. Cardenas looking upfield.
It does seem that both teams have been playing backhand force defense.
Yeah. And there you go. Krebs to Halavati into the end zone. Just like you said, Aaron, the disc does seem to find Krebs' hands. Incredibly athletic play to grab that scuba out of the air and then to look upfield immediately and hit her teammate in the end zone.
So close, and what a good grab.
Another interesting note about Krebs. Krebs has often been handling for a lot of this season, but this season, this game, when Gridlock has Cardenas available, I talked to the coaches before the game, and they're looking to put Krebs downfield a little bit more and give her more space to cut. It'll be interesting to see. This is kind of a new role for her, to see Krebs figure out how to best utilize her strengths both in the downfield space and in the backfield space. I'm expecting that we will still see her coming into the backfield sometimes. We've seen that in some moments already this game, and I'm excited to see her in this slightly different role.
Yeah, talking about other people with a lot of touches, Gina is the second in the league after Jolie, and they have a couple players on Gridlock who have not been at many of the games, including Nina Finley and Cartagena, or sorry. Cardenas, yes. Vale was only at 1, and so if you extrapolate their touches for both of those players, if they were to be at more games, they are also very high touch players.
Yeah, it looks like Shadow coming down in some kind of split stack or side stack to open up big areas of the space for the initiating cutters. They quickly hit their first cutter, get it back, and then hit Claire France on the sideline. Throws it into tight coverage and close to the sideline looking for Pendleton. We've got New York out with a break opportunity. See Cardenas resets immediately to Cassie Brown. It's Sammy Smalling with the run through D. Smalling immediately going deep upfield. Smith looks that off and instead resets to Kira Flores. Flores with the disc in the middle of the field, hits Ritzman up line. Ritzman looking for Flores. Flores clears out of the space. Ritzman instead finds Wallace. Wallace, I'd say from our game against them and also from watching film this season, Wallace has been an excellent release valve option. And it seems like anytime DC is in a high pressure situation, not sure where to get the disc, Wallace is there. And there we have her again, disc on the end zone line. Resets to Flores. There's a pick called.
Looks like there's just over 30 seconds left in the quarter.
Flores hits Wallace.
There we
Wallace
go.
with the inside look to Smalling for the DC score. All right, 27 seconds on the clock. Aaron and Langland, if you are the New York offense coming out with 27 seconds until the end of the quarter, what are you looking to do?
Ooh, the pop quiz. What are you thinking, Aaron? I mean, my gut says, you know, huck it with no ambition. Just go. No, 27 seconds, that's plenty of time to set up a good play and just punch one in before, you know, the end of this quarter.
Agreed, and they may not want to take any risky shots because that puts the disc
Right back, yep.
Yep. And you want to keep it in your hands at the end of the quarter.
Yeah, as Aaron explained earlier in this game, the end of the quarter in the first quarter does not stop play. And so if New York has possession of the disc and time runs out, they get to play for as long as they have possession. So a focus for New York, I would imagine, is maintaining possession for those first 27 seconds, maybe looking for slightly more conservative throws in that time. But we'll see.
Yeah, you know, I can't see them doing their buzzer beater play quite yet. We'll have to wait and see, though.
Pull comes up from Jess Sourbeer. We've got Finley with the disc in the middle of the field. Cartagena looking downfield until Shadow is putting a lot of pressure on these downfield cutters. It's clear that they are working very hard to try to get the D before time expires.
3 seconds.
Good. Used resets to Finley. Time has expired, so at this point will either end with New York scoring or with a New York turnover. If New York turns the disc over, DC will not get a chance to attack the goal themselves. Disc currently in the hands of Junst. Junst looking upfield. There's a little bit of confusion backfield, but Finley shakes free. Hits Halavati up the sideline. Halavati hits a very narrow window to Krebs. Krebs in the corner, swings it around to Cartagena. Cartagena finds Cardenas in front. Observer rules her not in. She must have caught it right on the edge. Cardenas with the disc on the goal line. Resets. It's great to see New York's patience in this moment. It's a high stress, high pressure situation, and they just keep finding those arounds. And Cartagena hits Krebs. On the break side, New York scores to end the quarter.
And New York being thoughtful and just keeping that possession, even when it was getting tight, just going back to those resets over and over again. So patience paid off. Nice work. DC also bringing a lot of defensive pressure that whole point, so that was great to see as well. This is a good matchup. All right, thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you in the next quarter. Welcome back to the Premier Ultimate League semifinal, our first one of the day. It's already been a great start. 5-4, tight games, huge bids, great looks. This has been a great start.
This live broadcast of the Premier Ultimate League is brought to you by Breakmark Ultimate Apparel. Go to breakmark.com to place your next custom team order or check out the PUL Athlete Collab shops.
As we mentioned early, a close game is familiar territory for New York Gridlock. This margin of 1 is a margin that they've seen before many times this season. Is less familiar territory for Shadow. However, in Shadow's closest game, their game against Raleigh Radiance, they did actually go down at the beginning of the game, and that game stayed fairly close all the way through the first 3 quarters. So Shadow has not played nearly as many close games as New York, but they have been in this situation before. It'll be exciting to see both teams coming out, see if there's any adjustments made after the first quarter, and see them continue to battle it out. Curious, Lineland and Aaron, are there any adjustments that you would make if you were coaching either team?
Well, I mean, you all got to have that kind of behind the scenes look with the coaches, so you got a little bit of insider. I know DC said they're not gonna really change anything like outrageous, right? They're gonna keep within their system, keep going. I mean, both teams are playing really exceptionally well, so let's see if there's any slight adjustments. I like all of DC's deep shots, but that's a personal preference.
Right. Yeah, I'm curious to see how the defenses look. It seems that they're playing mostly person defense, and there have been a fair number of pull plays that do always collapse into a vert stack. It seems like there's been some forehand force, some backhand force. I'll see if there's a trend for either team and how they come out.
We got Jackie Wan on the pull. Cartagena centers up to Krebs. Krebs to Cardenas, who immediately hits Finley. Finley back to Cardenas, looking upfield for Junst. Younes catches with a lot of space. Younes resets back to DeJesus. They're content to lose yards but maintain possession. DeJesus with the disc in the middle, looking for Krebs. Amanda Murphy comes up with the disc. But it looks like there will be a conversation. It looked like a very close call. The observer is putting the disc back into Krebs' hand. But looks like possession will stay with New York.
I'm hearing calls for backhand.
Krebs hits Younes upfield. There's a lot of pressure on Nina Finley. The reset forcing her way into the backfield. She does manage to catch it and then to swing to Cardenas, who's looking upfield. Cardenas hits Krebs.
Nice grab.
I am excited about this Amanda Murphy-Jolie Krebs matchup. Krebs has had, as we mentioned, a monster PUL season, and Amanda Murphy known for her incredibly tight, high-pressure defense. It'll be interesting to see how those players adjust to each other as the game goes on.
Whoa.
High throw goes up, intended for Younes, but over her head, almost saved by DeJesus. But DeJesus doesn't quite manage to pull it in. Disc is back with DC, currently in the hands of Jordan Sorensen. Then sends it out wide to Lisa Dane. Dane with the disc resets to Jackie Wan. Back to Dane. Dane in the middle of the field hits Murphy on the break side. Murphy looks to continue break side to Wan. We had tough play, but it looks like Wan came down with that incredible layout catch.
That was an amazing effort.
Yeah, New York too had a defender peel off to help even add even more pressure, and so making a play like that in big moments, huge.
Looks like Wan called an injury immediately after and is slowly making her way off the field. Of course, we're hoping that she is okay, especially after that incredible catch. We've got the DC's defense coming out, looking ready to pull. It's interesting, this looks like a slightly different O-line for New York than we have seen in the past. Jenny DeJesus, their leader and the league leader in goals, is, oh, I thought she was still out there. It looks like she's just getting them set up. So this is an O-line that does not have DeJesus, Cartagena, Cardenas, or Krebs, some of their offensive leaders. It'll be interesting to see the second offensive unit, how they do. It also means that this is the first time, I believe, that DC has seen this particular collection of New York players playing offense.
You may have heard some clapping, and that player did stand up on their own behalf and walk towards their sideline, so hopefully they're okay.
Pull out of bounds, Connerly walking it into the break mark. It looks like New York is set up in a vertical stack. DC's defense looks like it is a little bit poachy, not a zone, but with players starting out playing in spaces rather than guarding specific people. Connerly with the disc, working with Pressburg in the backfield. Connerly finds Hecko. Quick throw, Hecko looking upfield. Looks for a tough look upfield to Nikki Hare. Falls. We've got Marge Walker with the disc now.
I couldn't tell if she got a piece of that on that throw, too. Maybe that was one reason why it went a little lower.
Walker hits Sourbeer, who's looking deep for Lizzie Laurie, who snatches it out of the sky for the DC break.
Lizzie Laurie is one of the best smiles after a score, probably in the PUL. Like, always so excited, lighting up her old sideline.
We'll see players walking towards the sidelines. I'm wondering if there is a timeout. Either way, we will see New York on offense next, and I would anticipate seeing their default O-line, the players who've been playing offense, Krebs, Cartagena, Cardenas, DeJesus, Halavadi, would be my guess. see the teams gathering for a timeout. While that timeout happens, we have up on screen for you the bracket for this weekend. We have this current game is DC versus New York. Our next semi coming up is Indy Red and Raleigh Radiance. The winner of each semifinal will advance to the championship game, which will happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't want to look too far ahead, right? A lot of these teams haven't seen each other too much, but a lot of the matchups are actually on the other side of the bracket. So like Indy playing New York, DC and Raleigh. So it will be interesting to see who aligns with who.
And of those 4 teams playing in the semis, 3 have been here before. So New York, obviously as last year's winners, have played in the semis and the championship game. DC, last year's second place team, has been in these positions. Radiance on the other side of the bracket is also a previous PUL champion, but Indy Red is here for the first time. So something to look forward to in that second game is seeing a team on this stage for the first time as a team.
And Indy's got that momentum, right? They've had 2 big overtime wins. They're excited. They're really playing well. So anything can happen, and I'm really excited to see how it shakes out.
Pull comes up from Annalise Peters. Cardenas fields it, looking for Krebs. Krebs and Cardenas working together right now. Those are 2 incredibly dynamic players who love to keep the disc in motion, love to keep themselves in motion. I would not want to be a defender trying to stop handler movement from Cardenas and Krebs. Disc resets to Finley. Finley looking for Halavati.
Whoa!
Throw over her head, but she stays with it, comes down, hits Krebs upfield. Krebs has Cartagena wide open. Cartagena looking for Cardenas, who slips but gets back up. Cardenas with the disc hits De Jesus. De Jesus finds Krebs. It looks like Krebs and De Jesus looking to look together, but some smart defense from DC stops that motion. Krebs instead hits Cardenas around, who finds Cartagena on the break side for the New York hold.
For the DC defense, it did look like the marks were quite flat until they reached the end zone, and then it was more of a trap mark. Still finding space, though, to score.
And it is worth noting, we've talked about how this is Vale Cardenas' second game with Gridlock this season, but Cardenas and Cartagena have played many years together for the Colombian team Revo, and so those 2 have excellent chemistry for sure.
Yeah, I would say it's most people's saw room to have to guard both of them in the handler space, especially with those give and goes. Yuck.
We're going to have New York pulling to DC. So far, DC's motion has looked very fluid. They've been able to get open downfield. What do you all think Gridlock needs to do to force a turn or to put more pressure on Shadow to create more turnovers? Because at this point, if Gridlock wants to win this game, they're going to need to get some breaks.
Aaron, I know your defensive mindset. What are you seeing?
I think it's important to just keep mixing it up. If you know what to expect, you kind of know where the spaces are to cut to. And so if you can take away what they're looking at first, and it does look like they're in quite a bit of a junk set here, causing DC to slow down and swing it around.
Yeah, we have Flores with the disc right now. Flores hits Ritzman for just a couple of yards. The swing goes out wide and then continue up to Maggie Pendleton. Pendleton sends it back to Harris. Harris hits Smalling. Looks like a travel called. Smalling looking around to Flores and then to Smith. And Aaron, could you talk us through, in this zone set, what is this zone looking to do? What are they hoping to take away?
It looks like pretty much all the Gridlock players are in the middle of the field, but maybe knowing that the disc may swing to the sideline, they're going to quickly rush there if it does. There's not a lot of upfield looks, and as I say that, they find one.
Shoot.
And to the sideline there.
Yeah, Smalling and Ritzman working it up the side. Ritzman with the disc now in the middle, finding Smith. Smith looking, hits Flores on the reset. Flores hits Ritzman again. Ritzman out wide to France. France looking back for Flores. Flores hits Smalling.
Nice.
Smalling back to Flores for the DC hold.
That was a lot of patient movement.
A lot of really thoughtfulness behind that offense, and I really appreciate seeing New York also giving a different look, something interesting to kind of have them adjust, and they did a good job responding.
Yeah, we saw the disc hit both sidelines multiple times. That's really good lateral movement and looking for those holes either through the middle or up the sideline.
And given today's conditions, it is not very windy. That's a kind of zone that we wouldn't necessarily expect to force turnovers. That zone is often designed to slow teams down and force them to make a lot of passes. Part of the idea is that the more passes a team throws, the more likely it is that there's a turnover at some point. Also, as you force a team to make more and more passes, it's hard to stay resilient as an offense and to stay patient. Sometimes things look open, and it can be tempting after you've swung the disc 3 or 4 or 5 times to try to take that narrow inside look upfield or to try to send something deep, and that's often where the zone gets their Ds. So my guess is that New York, even though they were not able to generate a turnover, is happy with that defensive effort, happy with forcing Shadow to do something differently. And my guess is that we will continue to see that zone sprinkled in just to show DC's offense a different look. Sour beer on the pole. Fielded by Finley. Finley up to Cardenas, to Cartagena. Cartagena back to Cardenas. Cardenas hits Krebs. Krebs looking, hits Junst. Junst on the sideline, looking for a reset. It's like there's a lot of options, lots of players in the space. It ends up being Bantarayan coming from the back of the stack. Bantarayan resets to Cardenas as the disc finds Cartagena upfield. Cartagena back to De Jesus. De Jesus hits Bantarayan. Before the game, when we were talking to the coaches, Bantarayan was a player that the New York coaches brought up as a player to watch, someone who might not be on people's radars, may not be a stat leader, but is a workhorse of a cutter, always looking to gain yards, get open, and help their offense run. And Cartagena hits Finley in a very tight throw upfield for the New York score.
That was a safe pull-off on the defender's part. That could have been a pretty dangerous play, so very good mindfulness and body contact.
After watching that point and New York's offense throughout, one thing that I am wondering about is if DC is going to make any adjustments to think about taking away the handler motion that New York has been able to run. There's been a lot of pressure on these throws, but Cardenas, Cartagena, Krebs have all been able to get open in those spaces. We've also seen some excellent downfield continuation motion from Ella Junst. DC is definitely applying pressure, but so far they've not been able to stop the Gridlock cutters from getting open. And I'm curious to see if they make any kind of defensive adjustment there. Now, in Gridlock's only loss so far this season, they were playing Indy Red, who is known for their zone. I think one of the things that was successful for Red was taking away some of those dominant offensive players. I'm curious to see if we see any zone or adjustments to the person defense. But for now, we have New York on D, Cassie Brown on the pole, disc centered up to Tyler Smith. Smith hits Flores on the sideline. Near the sideline, Flores back to Smith. Smith looking for Smalling. Smalling looking downfield, but centers back to Smith. Smith hits Flores. France cutting open for the continuation, but Abby Hecko does a nice job on the mark to shift over, take that away, and force the reset. Disc back in the hands of Flores. And New York gets a D. Cassie Brown with the disc. Brown resets to Pressburg. Pressburg back to Brown. Brown hits the around throw to Tang. Tang with the disc, resets to Pressburg. Pressburg around to Ding. So far, New York has been very successful at completing their reset throws. They've had some trouble, though, with getting the disc downfield. So they've actually lost yards since the spot where they got the turnover. And there's a little bit of stagnation downfield. Pressburg resets to Cassie Brown. Brown with the disc, but an observer whistle, I believe, signals a timeout.
In the PUL, during a timeout, you can swap out all 7 players, and when the disc comes back in, the stall goes back to 0. The timeouts are 70 seconds long. The offense needs to be set within 50 seconds, and then the defense needs to be set in those remaining 20 seconds. This live broadcast is brought to you by the Premier Ultimate League. The PUL is a 501c6 nonprofit. This league has been community funded since day 1, and we are so grateful for the support. We ask that you consider donating to help us continue to transform and fulfill our mission. Head to premierultimateleague.com to donate today.
As Aaron mentioned, teams can sub off a timeout. It looks like New York has put in more of their offensive-minded players. This is not their full default O-line. We can see that Pressburg is still out there. Cartagena is not. But Cardenas and Krebs, who have played primarily offense, are out there. So is Ella Junst. Sam Harris, Abby Hecko are staying. And Maria Waverka is their 7th. I believe just came on after that timeout. Like Cardenas looks for Krebs right away. However, there is, I believe, still a DC coach standing on the field, which is a good indication that the disc probably came in early.
Just a little excited. You know, you gotta get it going.
The 50 seconds does stand for coaches as well.
Aaron, what are you seeing downfield for New York right now?
This looks like tight person on a vert stack. They have one dump that's kind of behind, and then all 6 players in the stack. Jolie Krebs comes off the front and finds Ella Junst.
Junst hits Harris off the line. Harris with the disc looking to reset. Harris resets to Pressburg. And Pressburg takes a big shot deep for Krebs.
Ooh, good positioning.
Good battle in the deep space. Looks like a foul called, and based on the fact that they're having a conversation, I'm guessing it will either be a contested foul or they will go to the observer. Looks like they do go to the observer, who rules no foul. Excellent defense there by the DC player.
Marge Walker picking up. I did start my day off with a mug made by Marge Walker. She's a very talented artist in a lot of different mediums. Fun fact.
Got Lori with the disc looking for a big shot. Amanda Murphy with several yards of space runs that down. Has the disc right near the goal line now. It's Jess O.
Ooh, that's
O
pretty.
resets back to Lisa Dang with the easy continuation for the DC point.
Smooth.
It's kind of an assist bookends there for Lisa Dang with that big D in the end zone on the other side.
All right, and we'll see who Gridlock sends out on offense. And they started that point on D, but off the timeout put in some of their O-line players. We'll see if those players return to play another point. It looks like they will. Junst, Cardenas, and Krebs, who are all just on, all walking back to the line, where they're joined by Finley, DeJesus, Cartagena, and Olavide.
You know, I'm looking down at the crowd. We got a nice mix of Madison community members. There's a lot of, you know, half the crowd is Margaret Walker's immediate family. But we also see some of the indie group already kind of checking out, you know, who could be a possible down the road, along with a lot of New York fans, too. So checking out the competition, possibly, in the future.
Got Annalise Peters on the pole.
Pull sails high and lands just around the brick mark.
Got Finley with the disc. New York downfield, now in a vert stack, but set up in kind of a hoe stack to create some space. Collapsed into their vert. We got Krebs with the disc looking for Cardenas around. Cardenas looking to go up line. Miscue gives Shadow the disc with a relatively short field.
2 minutes left in this particular quarter. 9-6.
Another whistle. It sounds like there's a timeout.
I'm curious to see that timeout call happens pretty early in the stall, which makes me wonder if DC is using this either to set up a particular play or to sub in particular players. We talked to the DC coaches before the game, and they told us that though they do have this 3-line rotation, they do have players who lean more offense and players who lean more defensively. And that in this game, they're probably looking to have something closer to an O-line, D-line situation than they have in previous games. And it does look from the players coming out now that they have many of their O-line leaning players out. Looks like we're gonna have Tyler Smith picking up the disc with Kat Ritzman as the reset. Gridlock, it looks like, made a few substitutions. Some of their players who were just on are staying, but they also have some new folks up there. Smith with the disc. Smith hits Smalling. Smalling looking downfield. Smalling up to Flores. Flores hits Smalling for the DC goal and the DC break.
Yeah, it looks like subbing in that line worked great. Nice end zone offense.
Yeah, and Flores with the assist. Flores is DC's assist leader on the season. I think that she already has a couple today. All right, and Aaron and Laneland, I know you both have coached. If you are the New York coaches, what are you saying to your team right now? Are there adjustments that you're making? Is there a way that you're framing or a way you're talking about mentality? You're down a couple goals. It's not an enormous margin. We have seen much larger comebacks in the PUL. 4 points in a club game might feel like a lot. In a PUL game, 4 points is an uphill battle, but it's far from an impossible battle. What do you say to your team?
I think it's important to just continue the confidence. You're in this game for a reason, and it is a big game, but trying to relieve pressure in certain ways, maybe trying to come up with smaller goals, smaller things to look for on the field that are not just, getting the disc in the end zone. Maybe it's putting on strong marks, maybe it's cutting strong to the open side and clearing quickly. And when you can do those little things well, those just build into actual scores on the field.
All right, Krebs with a deep shot.
Ooh.
And Mueller gets under it. Ewan's had some separation, but Mueller able to recover that distance. And also, we only saw it for a couple of throws, but it looked like Shadow came down in kind of a zone set or something poachy on that one. I believe that's the first time we've seen them in that set this game. So interesting to see a new defense from them. I think a timeout.
Okay, I was gonna say, whoa.
Yeah, with a minute and a half left in the first half, each team has 2 timeouts, so it makes sense that they're using them up 2 timeouts per half. And so since the half is coming, that's why the timeouts are also coming.
And also looking at the players who are gathered around the Shadow coach, it looks like once again DC is using this timeout as a chance to put in their more O-leaning players. Probably trying to punch in this score before the end of the half.
Love you.
You saw good energy with New York. In their huddle, you saw Echo kind of trying to amp everybody up. A lot of these miscues, too, make sense if you haven't had your full squad in most of your games. So just kind of trust the process, keep grinding. I mean, their handler give-goes are something terrifying. So just get this D, reset, and let's lock and load.
Aaron, what are you seeing from DC's set off the timeout?
Looks like DC's mostly in a side stack. There's a couple players out in the open lane. And Gridlock is pretty far off of the players, especially on the cutters, but giving space for the dump as well.
Gridlock plays good defense on those first couple initiating cuts, but Wallace able to come back. Again, that release valve for DC. DC has now collapsed back into their vert stack. And now we have Tyler Smith with the disc on the sideline. Smith hits Wallace in the middle of the field. Wallace resets to Smith. Smith looking for Smalling. Younst with a huge bid. You can see as Smalling caught it that Younst, I think, still had her hand on that disc. Shows just how close she was and how much pressure New York is looking to put on.
Yeah, it looks like they may have cut it at the same time. So the disc will stay with DC.
I was gonna say, I wouldn't be surprised if that disc is warped right now after.
Smalling resets around to Smith, who hits Ritzman upfield on the break side. Back to Smith. Smith looking downfield, but content to hit Ritzman back in the middle. Smith gets it back from Ritzman. Looking for Smalling. Something I'm noticing is that right now the DC stack is very deep. Which does mean that when Ritzman gets the mark to move with that big fake, Maggie Pendleton is open with a ton of yards under. Tyler Smith airing it out to Wallace. Wallace and Cartagena in a battle downfield. Oh, not to Wallace, sorry, to Flores. But Cartagena able to get better positioning. New York has the disc back. There's about 5 seconds left. So New York is able to maintain possession for the next few seconds. That will mean that DC does not get another chance to score. With time expired, this point will either end with a New York score or with a New York turnover. New York very patient right now. You see Tyler Smith doing a nice job to seal on the mark and prevent the downfield throw to Krebs. Disc goes high over Hlaviti's head, and that will be the end of the first half.
All right, great first half. We're excited to have you come on back, grab that drink, grab that snack. We'll see you soon.
Perfect.
I'm so impressed by the conditioning of this Gridlock team. They look very well seasoned, and in spite of the relative heat and the lots and lots of reps, they're just continuing to go full throttle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I were looking at these two teams, I don't know if I'd be able to tell which one was playing more relative points per person. So I am really impressed with their clear conditioning, their hard work that has brought them here.
Come on, Brad!
Welcome back to our first semifinal matchup between DC Shadow and New York Gridlock. And we've seen a lot of tremendous plays. DC Shadow with a little bit of a gap right now, 10-6, but overall just really great plays back and forth. It'll be interesting to see how both teams adjust. Just as an update of weather conditions, it is 77 degrees out, 81 feels like. Not much wind still. So we haven't really seen that play a big factor in the two teams' decisions, but I don't know, what are you all thinking needs to adjust for that Gridlock team to kind of close this gap?
Yeah, I think the DC team has just been so patient and ready to swing it around. One thing that we saw against DC when the Monarchs played just last week was a force middle working, at least the first time we threw it. Just changing the spaces that are open on the field a little bit, changing the mark around within a point. Here it looks like the marks are quite flat, and throwing over that flat mark.
Yeah, Wallace runs that shot down for a pretty quick hold for DC.
Yeah, one thing also to note about the conditions, Annie and I walked down on the field before the game, and this is a grass field. Typically PUL games are played on turf. The grass is nice, but underneath is, we haven't had rain here in a little while, so it might be still pretty tough on their bodies with the layouts.
And if this game stays relatively close, or at least for New York, if they're down and trying to make up this deficit, I would expect to see more high-pressure defensive plays, potentially more layouts. If we have players laying out multiple times, maybe that is a factor in terms of how their bodies are feeling as the game goes on.
Just saw DC Shadow player with a cow print hat. They are really leaning into this Wisconsin culture. I'm not sure if the cameras captured it, but behind the players is a huge fair that also had the Wienermobile. Just very typical Wisconsin setting.
Pull comes up from DC. New York looks like a pretty typical O-line for New York coming down. Finley with the disc in the middle. Defense pretty tight on the handlers, forces that throw to go backwards to Cartagena. Cardenas with the disc now in the middle of the field. Cardenas resetting to Finley.
And I see a backhand force here again from DC.
And Finley hits that around flick to Cardenas. Cardenas up to Cartagena. Cartagena looking deep, nobody's going, so instead hits De Jesus under. Continues quickly to Cardenas and then to Halavity on the sideline. Back to Cardenas in the middle. Get around to De Jesus. De Jesus wanted to give it right back, but Cardenas wasn't quite ready for it and was pretty far backfield. Got a stoppage now. De Jesus with the disc pretty close to the middle.
Looks like there was a pick downfield.
Disc tapped in. De Jesus looking for Cardenas. Hits an over the mark throw. Cardenas continues up to Krebs. Krebs hits Junst. Cardenas makes that cut, forces the mark to move. Junst hits Krebs back around. And then Krebs to Junst. That tricky around flick for the goal.
Yeah, they're really using that side of the field. They did move it across the field multiple times, but never got trapped on this backhand sideline. Looks like they just prefer throwing that flick, even that flick around.
And we saw a variety pack of throws. We saw high release backhands, kind of different angles. They're really getting creative with their throwing choices.
Yeah, something we were talking about, the three of us at the half, is that DC has been very successful throughout the season in swinging the disc side to side. I think they're also doing a really nice job as marks about flashing to the break side to take away that continuation break, which makes sense if you are consistently playing against players on offense who are looking to move the disc side to side, that the defense would get used to adjusting. Something that I would love to see from Gridlock, if DC is going to flash in that way, would be giving an additional cut. Maybe looking for that inside window. If you know the mark is jumping to take away the around, can you get another player involved in the space that opens up when the mark moves? It might be kind of a new thing for Gridlock. Again, we've talked about they're often used to running their offense through a few players who are touching the disc a lot. This is kind of a change to that system, but I think could be helpful for Gridlock. Pull comes up from Cassie Brown. Smalling fields the pull. It centers to Smith in the middle.
Got another backhand force, another break forehand around.
Disc back to Smith, now on the sideline. Smith to Ritzman in the middle. Ritzman up to Smalling. Smalling looking deep. Looks like that throw is going to be too far. Gridlock with one of their relatively few break chances so far this game. We'll see if they're able to capitalize. Pressburg back to pick up the disc.
We've got our vert stack here, cuts coming off the back. Mark is quite flat.
Two cuts go deep right away. Both looked off. Pressburg with a high stall is forced to just punt it. That disc sails far out of bounds. And Shadow is going to get a second chance.
Yeah, DC with really great handler defense, just shutting down that reset where that huck was probably the best option with that high stall count.
Smith bringing the disc to the sideline, tapping it in, marked by Brown. Smalling with an immediate cut up line, gets looked off, but Ritzman gets it in that upline space before resetting to Wallace. Wallace hits Smith. Smith continue upfield to Harris. Harris back to Smith. Smith to Smalling. Smalling right on the doorstep. The Gridlock player is pretty tight, but Smalling hits the small window to the break side to Claire France for the DC hold.
We're starting to see that gap widen a little bit. We're now at 12-7 DC on top.
New York's O-line walking out to the line. We still have plenty of time, but I would say that we are getting to the point where it is very important for Gridlock to be holding on their offensive points. If DC is able to get a few more breaks, open this lead up to 6 or 7, that would be a large mountain for Gridlock to climb with less than a half left in this game. And we've seen, as DC's coaches said they would, we've seen some players playing more offense, some playing more defense, but a rotation through many players, getting different players in different looks. So far, Shadow has been able to continue to rely on their depth and their systems rather than needing to look to specific players. Cardenas with the disc in the center, hits Krebs upfield. Krebs looking downfield. Krebs finds Cardenas with a cheeky little around flick. Not an easy throw, but Krebs makes it look simple. Cardenas looks for a few low release options, ends up hitting the scuba to Cartagena. He's got the disc right outside the end zone line, right up by that front cone. Cardenas makes a cut and gets some separation, but Cartagena's throw is just a little bit too far.
You heard a lot of oohs with that fake combination into a scuba from the sideline. They had a lot of great break throws around the mark, a lot of creative throws. Just didn't get it in the end.
You see both teams are playing backhand force again, but I think we'll see the disc move across the field anyway. Here it comes.
And we could see New York putting on a lot of pressure on those first few throws as Shadow continues to reset. They're able to gain a few more yards of separation. That, makes sense. The longer you play defense, the more tired you get. Looks like Shadow is into a pretty flowy offense right now. We'll see if Gridlock is able to make up that distance again, come into putting more pressure on. As I say that, Dane with a shot over the top. I believe that is for Pendleton for the DC score.
Just pretty flow, I mean. And that grab, too, off of that sideline, that was just tremendous effort.
Lead up to 6 for Shadow. They seem pretty calm, cool, collected. They've been here before. New York is definitely still in this game, but we can see up here from the body language of the Gridlock players, definitely walking down slow. We see some heads down a little bit. This is a tough spot to be in. It'll be interesting to see if Gridlock is able to be resilient in this moment. This, I would imagine, is the largest deficit they faced all season. Can they claw their way back?
I mean, they got the tools, right? They have some of the top scorers. They're gritty. They have this fun type of play. We can still see a comeback, and so I'm excited to see how they adjust.
Since New York plays a pretty set O and D line, this line that's coming out now after their O-line got broken is a set of players who do play some offense but are not the players for their primary offensive look. This is, having been a player who's played on lines like this, I'd say it's always a tough challenge, exciting, but takes a lot of mental resilience to be someone who's not playing most of the O points and come in and play offense on a point that feels like a must-hold point for your team. So we'll see how this goes. As I say that,
a little too much, yo.
Yeah, DeJesus's throw to Harris is just a little bit too high. DC has the disc. Murphy on the sideline right now, marked by Hare, resets around to Sourbeer. Sourbeer continuation throw up to Juan. Juan back to Walker in the middle. Walker finds Murphy, and you can see the DC players have been able to get some pretty big separation downfield. With that shot, Lizzie Laurie able to come down with it.
And we saw that big open space kind of crack open with DC because DeJesus really pulled off and helped one of her teammates. And you can just see she's all over the field trying to help in any way. You can tell they want this win. And DC just comes out on top, just persistent, constant, just pressure.
And that, I think, is an advantage. DC, as we've mentioned, is it runs a very disciplined offensive system. New York, when someone is getting open, is looking to help. That help defense can take away an important next throw. However, going to play and help means that you're leaving somebody open. And something that DC has done really well so far is take advantage of noticing when New York Gridlock players are going to help and then hitting the person who's unguarded.
To that left, Beans and just open on the unders, and Ellen took multiple deep. That's how we keep working, right? We don't get under and then clear. We're just gonna stay there and so eventually hit the disc.
I don't know, maybe it's the cow hat. That's like the energy that's just like, yeah, that's the thing bringing them together. You just don't know.
And I love to see that energy from the shadow coach in the huddle. It's awesome to see a team that is playing in such a calm, cool, and collected way, and then to see that they are also able to feel that excitement, that intensity, but in a way that is not taking them into playing in a chaotic or disorganized fashion. Great energy from DC. Gridlock walking out there. Hopefully this timeout has been an opportunity for them to do kind of a mental reset, get back into this. We know from watching the first half that Gridlock's players were able to get open. Something that we talked about in the first half was, what is DC going to do to limit some of these star players who are around the disc a lot, thinking about Cardenas and Cartagena and Krebs in particular. In the first half, those players were still able to get open. I would say they were under a lot of pressure, often forced into spaces that might have been their second or third or fourth choice space to attack, but still able to get open. I'm curious to see if New York is able to settle in a little bit here and really utilize the strengths of those players. Ball coming up, looks like Cardenas is going to field it, but it lands just out of bounds.
And you may notice there's some faces that aren't present on the field, right, this weekend, and some pretty notable figures too. We have some of the world's players, Cami Groom and also Kyra Trope, missing from DC. And then you have player from New York. And then there's also U24 player also missing.
Yes, Graham Cunningham is missing for a U24 event.
Krebs with the disc now. Something that I will point out is this possession started with a big gainer up to Abby Hecko. Hecko has primarily played defense so far for Gridlock. Hecko actually is the regular season leader for this team in defensive points played. But it looks like in this moment when New York needs to put some points on the board, they're changing up the personnel a little bit to get Hecko involved in their offense. Right now we got Krebs with the disc. Krebs with another big around shot that Yoons comes down with.
That's a grab.
It's an incredible play by Junst.
Yeah, that feels like a bit of a momentum point. I think if the team can ride on that, you know, players going up big, trust passes, you know.
Yep, seeing a little bit of the body language shift here with Gridlock.
Yeah.
You're
We're
right.
seeing smiles and just looser bodies. That's a good sign.
And we'll get a look at Gridlock's defense again. And Shadow's O.
We're just under 5 minutes, so still a little bit of wiggle, but like what Annie said, New York's getting to the point where they need to keep generating, and specifically getting a D now after that big momentum would be huge.
And as we talked about a little bit before, Shadow has been very content to continuously reset the disc between their handlers. Often their offensive motion involves movement between the handlers. They hit a cutter downfield. The cutter often looks upfield for a stall or two and then resets. They get the disc across the field, hit a cutter, and that pattern continues. We are curious to see if Gridlock is going to make any adjustments to try to take away some of that handler motion and force Shadow into uncomfortable situations.
Force here is forehand, and DC is trapped on the line. Continuing up the force sideline.
DC is able to hit that around throw, but it sends Flores backfield. Bantarayan almost with the run through D on Smith. That's the kind of pressure that can make a huge difference for Gridlock at this point in the game. Reset back to Smith. Smith finds Flores. Flores looking downfield, looking for Wallace. And Maria Waverka gets a D on the reset look to Wallace. Excellent pressure, just as we talked about New York pressuring the handlers downfield. They put on a ton of pressure, ultimately forcing that tough look and an errant throw on that tough look. Gridlock looking to march it up the other direction. Pressburg with the disc right now, looking to shoot deep. So look out in front. I don't know if it's for Bantarayan or Hecko, but they're both in pursuit. Bantarayan, our player to watch from the beginning, or one of our players to watch, runs it down for the Gridlock break.
Lovely. Let's add some drama. Let's keep it going.
Yeah. Nice work from Gridlock here.
What do you all think that point means for Gridlock? How does that point shift the momentum? How does it change the mentality? How are you feeling as people who have been in games where you've had to work back from a deficit? How does a point like that shift the way that you're feeling at this point in the game?
Yeah, I think PUL games just feel especially long, and if you are down some breaks, that means that your O-line's been out there a lot. And now that they are getting breaks, their D-line can just run, and hopefully they have some legs on them, maybe more than their O-line has right now.
And I'm somebody that is like full broody, like underdog. If I get a score like that, I'm thinking, we got a chance.
For sure. Also, we were talking about how clean Shadow's offense has looked throughout this game, how comfortable they've been resetting the disc to their handlers. On that point, we saw New York really pressure those handlers. I would imagine it also does a lot for their confidence to know that they can disrupt what Shadow does well. And Cassie Brown with the roller pull. I'm wondering if we're going to see some kind of trap set or some kind of different defensive set with the disc coming in on the sideline.
The disc rolled out of bounds just before half field, but because it landed in, they'll take it at the sideline.
And it looks like it's actually just a person defense look, just wanting to start DC from the sideline rather than the middle.
Great around break.
Yeah, Juan resets to O. O back to Juan. And Juan to O again. O looking downfield, hits the reset to Sour Beer. Sour Beer with that little inside up to Murphy. Murphy looking downfield. Murphy finds Walker. An excellent switch by Gridlock stops the momentum on that play. Walker finds Juan. Juan looking downfield. Juan with the big around. Sour Beer with a nice catch to keep possession. Resets again to Juan.
Gridlock here with just some tight person defense. It looks like they're forcing flick.
Walker with the big huck downfield. Looking for Lori, a very appealing target downfield, but that throw is too far.
Great run by Lori, too. Just a little bit.
And I think, again, on that possession, we saw some really close defense from Gridlock on the handlers, putting a lot of pressure on DC, forcing them into less comfortable sets. We'll see if Gridlock is able to make use of this turn that they've generated.
Uh-oh. Nice grab. Yep, no contest. No contest. Sometimes those plays happen with floaty. Everyone tries to maintain a safe body, but when you're going for the disc, sometimes that contact unfortunately happens. These players are no stranger to it.
Cardenas with a big fake, but looks to reset, hits Pressburg. New York pretty deep in their own end zone, and Pressburg looking for Brown, throws it right to Jess Sourbeer for the Callahan. We asked before, what does the break do for your mentality? Follow-up question, what does it do for your mentality to force a turnover, have a chance to get a second break in a row, and then throw a Callahan?
Oh, that is a tough moment. Anytime you throw a Callahan is a tough moment. But I think they just got to chalk it up to, you know, 1 point, and we're on to the next one.
Yep, reset mindset. We got the next one. Great play by DC Shadow. But if you're thinking about it, you have 1 quarter and less than 2 minutes to just go all out. So might as well let that one go and just push.
Right, and you've still given your O-line a rest, and hopefully they're coming back with, you know, at least their breath is caught.
Exciting play, though. How awesome do you get to see a Callahan? You know what I'm saying?
And I will say for Gridlock, too, as tough as that feels in the moment, they have proven to themselves again that they can generate a turn against Shadow. So hopefully that helps to boost their confidence some, too, knowing that they are still in this game, that if their defense keeps working hard, they will get more chances. Offense out now. Krebs hits Junst upfield. Junst back to Cardenas. Cardenas to Junst. Junst looking upfield. Finley makes a nice deep cut, has some space, but Junst decides to instead hit Krebs, making that strike cut.
Of course, here's Flick. And they're working mostly on the open side here.
Krebs up to DeJesus, who looks to reset again to Krebs. Krebs with a nice inside to Junst for the New York score.
Pretty efficient, too, right? We said there's less than 2 minutes. They did that in under a minute. And we still have 1 minute left where they could possibly still get a chance to score again.
Yeah, extremely efficient point for New York.
The Western Ultimate League and the Premier Ultimate League will play the first ever WUL versus PUL All-Star game during the 2025 UFA Championship weekend in Madison, Wisconsin on August 23rd. The All-Star matchup marks a historic milestone for the sport, the first official event between the 2 premier women and non-binary professional ultimate frisbee leagues in the world. Travel, however, is expensive, and donating to our Give Butter. Yep, that's what it is, Give Butter. Donating to our Give Butter would help our players leave their mark on Ultimate. Scan the QR code to donate.
That matchup is also going to be in Madison, Wisconsin, and I can tell you as a community member, so many people are so hyped for that game and also to host this particular event.
Yeah, I think since the creation of the WUL, people have been hoping for some kind of PUL, WUL crossover, so exciting to get that this year. Shadow with the disc. France has it near the sideline. France looking downfield, finds Smalling, making that strike cut. Smalling with the big pump fake to then hit Ritzman under. Ritzman with the disc on the side, looking upfield. Throws a scuba reset to Flores. Flores with the disc in the middle. Looking around, finds France.
Good catch, too, just facing the sun wholly on that.
France to Smith. Smith upfield to Smalling, who makes a great layout grab to save possession. Before hitting Smith, Flores, and this is again DC with their very smooth back and forth motion, changing the angle that they're attacking. Ritzman with the disc on the sideline now, finds Flores, tight window.
We're now out of time.
And Flores looking to reset. Smalling with the disc. Smalling to Ritzman. Ritzman looking downfield. Ritzman finds Flores. And Flores looking for Smith. Poach defender in the way. Smith pulls up to ensure that that play is safe, and as a result is not able to catch that disc. Excellent work by Gridlock to stop DC from holding there.
Right, the quarter ends in a turnover instead of a score.
I'm so impressed by the conditioning of this Gridlock team. They look very well seasoned, and in spite of the relative heat and the lots and lots of reps, they're just continuing to go full throttle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I were looking at these two teams, I don't know if I'd be able to tell which one was playing more relative points per person. So I am really impressed with their clear conditioning, their hard work that has brought them here.
All right, welcome back, y'all. Thanks for continuing to join us. We've got a good matchup, 1 quarter left. BC Shadow up 15-10 on New York Gridlock. Now, you may have seen a pretty talented player out there make a huge bid, and one of the players we wanted to highlight was Sammy Smalling. You see the score there. One of DC's most prominent handlers, just really offensively efficient. We saw that really big bid, and then just smart cuts into space over and over again. Talk about a reliable resource for your team. Sam Smalling, just great game so far.
Yeah, a lot of Shadow's smooth, fluid movement has been running through Smith and Smalling. So awesome to see them continuing to facilitate that offense in this big game.
We see New York holding hands, lifting it up. We're ready to battle this last quarter together to try to get to that final.
Krebs and Cardenas working together at first. They hit Yunst upfield. I say, though New York has struggled at points in this game, Yunst has been able to generate a lot of separation in many of her cuts.
Pick called on that quick give-go.
Yeah, just coming back to Yunst, marked by Mueller.
Gridlock's Berg stack now has all 6 people other than the thrower in the stack. But it looks like Cardenas is ready to make that dump cut.
And we reset to Cardenas, then around to Krebs. See Murphy try to seal with that mark, but Krebs able to get the throw off to Halavati, back to Krebs, then to Cardenas, then to Cartagena. Cartagena looking to reset, hits Krebs, back to Cartagena. See DC Shadow switch on that cut by Krebs to stop the upfield motion and upfield momentum. It's something that I would say has become way more common in competitive Ultimate in the past couple of years. Some people call it rolling on the handlers, that when a handler makes a strike cut, having the person who was marking drop off and pick up that player making the strike cut. It's a great way to stop the offense from continuing in the direction that they have momentum. This back to Cartagena. Krebs able to jump it in for the New York hold.
Just like that, the lead is down to 4 points. DC's up 4 on New York Gridlock.
And 4 points, about a quarter left. What do you all think? Can Gridlock pull off the comeback?
Let's do it. Let's get all the drama-filled games. Let's get the tight matchups. There's been so many OT games. Let's just do it.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I think if you get those high-touch players in the right mindset, they're going to just run the ball. It does seem like the first half was kind of marked by a lot of backhand force, and so far the second half has mostly been forehand force from what I've seen. And I wonder if that will play to Gridlock's advantage.
I'm also curious, we saw a little bit of zone earlier in the game. That is an option. Thinking about for Gridlock in particular, it could mix up their D, throw a different look at Shadow. However, one concern, we have just under 11 minutes left. Zones often force the offense to make a lot of throws, which means when a team plays zone defense, those points often take longer. Gridlock, if they're looking to make this comeback, is going to need to force some turns and to force them relatively efficiently for them to have enough time to score enough goals to close this gap before the game is over. We got Smith with the disc, finds Wallace. New York switches, Brown marking Wallace now. Smalling with an excellent upline cut. Smalling hits Ritzman. Ritzman with the big fake, looks to get it off the line, hits that around to Smalling. Smalling continues to Flores. Flores upfield to Harris. Harris back to Flores. Flores on the doorstep. Flores again, DC's assist leader. She resets this time to Smalling, who hits the around to Tyler Smith. Nice, clean, easy hold for DC.
And New York brought a lot of pressure on that handler set. And Smalling just kind of came in and brought this kind of calming presence and that reset. And then we saw her take over. And then we see that great assist as well. DC just patient, persistent, and precise. And that was an alliteration if you didn't. You had 2 teachers in the booth.
And we watch the teams come out to the line for the next point. Thinking about Shadow's smooth, fluid offense. One note, the PUL season is relatively short. This is for each team their 7th game of the season. That's not a lot of time to build chemistry. Many of these teams practice, but practices tend to be weekly. There's not a ton of time for practice. One advantage for Shadow is that many of their players play club together in the club season. So 12 players for Shadow play for DC Scandal, and 7 play for the mixed team Rally, which means all those players have some chemistry from playing with their Shadow teammates on their club teams. Shadow on the pole. Cardenas fields it, looking for Krebs. Back to Cardenas, back to Krebs. Up ahead to Cartagena. And that has been kind of an interesting adjustment that we've seen. Cardenas and Krebs have often been fielding the pole for New York with Cartagena downfield, which is kind of an interesting look. Cartagena is very much a handler and generally handles, but it's been interesting to see Cardenas and Krebs, who are similar styles of players, being able to get the disc motion, hitting those quick little throws to begin, and it looks like it's helping to open up Gridlock's offense. Cardenas with the disc now, finds Krebs on the sideline. Krebs looking downfield, finds Cartagena. Cartagena probably about 10 or 15 yards out. And with excellent vision, hits De Jesus all the way across the field. Easy continue up to Halavity for the New York score.
Great look right across the field.
Yeah, if you're New York, I don't know that it gets much better than that. It's a clean, easy, efficient hold. No scary moments on that point for the offense. Nothing that looked particularly close. And a pretty quick point, too, leaving New York with time to keep trying to work their way back. Got 9 minutes even left in this game. And it looks like DeJesus getting the New York defense set up. It'll be interesting to see if they come down in their person or anything different. In the past few points, they have been able to put a lot of pressure on the handlers. And I would love to see that look again from New York. Interesting looking at DC. They have a lot of their O-leaning players playing, but they're missing Tyler Smith, who has often been their central handler. Smalling fields the pull, hits Flores in the middle. Gridlock's in kind of an interesting defensive set downfield to start. Looks like players in space.
Ooh.
They've now recovered. Waverka almost with the D. But now disc in the hands of Wallace. Wallace finds Flores in that front space. Flores looking downfield. Hits Ritzman near the sideline. Ritzman looking downfield. Pumps off Smalling's strike cut. Instead resets to Flores. Flores with that high throw around to France. France just a few yards out from the end zone line. Resets to Flores. Flores looking for the goal. Finds Smalling.
There's Smalling again.
Just like that, 2 more goals since we talked about her.
Yeah, you're welcome, Sammy Smalling. We're happy to help. That was a different look from Gridlock on defense at the beginning of that point.
Yeah, it did look like it forced the cutters to spread out as well. And then once it collapsed into person, the vert stack, you know, collapsed into a vert stack.
All right, so Shadow up 17-12. We got 8 minutes left. Still doable, still possible. But as you said, we need to see some quick points coming from Gridlock in order to have enough space and time to make this comeback true.
Yeah, and Shadow has led this entire game. We're definitely going to need to see a different level of intensity from Gridlock and an ability to take away what Shadow is looking to do on offense that we haven't seen yet so far this game. Gridlock has some incredible players. I'm also curious as we get closer to the end if some of their mainly offensive superstars might play more defense. But we'll see what happens. Cardenas with the disc now, looking downfield. Cardenas with a big flick out in front to Cartagena. She's going to run that down.
Well, we talked about quick scores. That's one way to do it.
Yeah, I was going to
so
say,
pretty.
said on our last, New York's last O point that it was hard to ask for something better than that, but I think we just got better than that.
Yeah, looks like a beautiful pull play, wide open spaces.
Yeah, and again, using the chemistry of those two players who have played together for many, many years. Fun to see Cardenas sending that disc to Cartagena, though. I feel like the other version of that, Cartagena to Cardenas, is one that we have seen more often. So fun to see Cartagena downfield. I do think that putting her into the cutter space has been a good look for New York, has changed the way their offense is flowing, and has been a good adjustment that they've made in the second half. Yeah, it looks like we have Cardenas and Krebs. It looks like Younes too on the defensive point coming in for New York. So I guess we're at the point of the game where we're gonna see some crossover. Something that we talked about with the New York coaches before the game is that New York generally has brought pretty small rosters to games. The PUL allows you to bring up to 27. Their largest roster at a game before today was 17. That means that the Gridlock players have played a lot of points. The coaches also talked about the training they've been doing. They meet with a PT, do some lifting to prepare for these games. So the coaches said that they were feeling fully confident that the Gridlock players are ready to play as many points as they need to. with a 4-goal gap and about 7.5 minutes left, now is when we find out if that is the case. Aaron, what are you seeing from Gridlock's defense right now?
It's looking like forehand, and it looks like DC's kind of been stuck on the line there for a little bit. I think that was a travel call that the players tried to play on, but observers stopped the play.
Oh, and that throw behind Harris. Gets a hand on it, but isn't able to bring it in. Pressberg with the disc now in the middle of the field. Finds Cardenas. Cardenas looking downfield.
Ooh, close.
Yeah, Hare able to make that catch. France close on the D, but not quite close enough. Disc back to Cardenas. Cardenas finds Hecko.
DC's back to backhand force now.
Hecko back to Cardenas, who finds Hare on the break side. That's a beautiful throw by Cardenas. Really not much that any defender can do about that one. Disc back to Cardenas.
Scuba
beats her defender. Cardenas finds her. Huge spike from Krebs. You can see the intensity, the emotion from Krebs on that one. New York is within 3.
That was, yep, another break from Gridlock. 3 more and we've got a tie game.
And Krebs is one of those players that you haven't really seen shift their body language throughout the game, right? Just always intense, ready to play the next point. And you need players like that when the pressure is on.
We love to see that emotion. Krebs is fired up. I would imagine that she is on the field for most of the rest of this game.
I was just thinking that. I don't know if she leaves the field.
It's a good contradiction, right? You have New York kind of fiery, scrappy, and then you have that DC discipline, steady, patient.
And deep, right? They're running 3 full lines, whereas Gridlock is running a much tighter roster at this point.
And DC, one of the players we highlighted hasn't taken the field in quite some time, right? So some of their best players actually haven't been on. So it just shows the depth.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious too, we're looking at another DC 0 point without Tyler Smith. We are also looking at Amanda Murphy playing offense for DC. Murphy known for defensive pressure, and maybe out there to provide some energy, be a bit of a spark for DC's O-line. Jess O fields the pull and centers up to Smalling. Smalling hits Ritzman, pretty close to the sideline. Flores with the continue cut, not open. Ritzman instead finds Smalling, who launches it upfield to Flores. Hecko in pursuit.
Whoa.
That throw,
Sammy.
that's basically a perfect throw.
Yeah, well-timed deep cut. Plenty of space to run onto that disc.
Strategically, right, for DC, it might make more sense to hold the ball, eat up some more of that clock, but if you got the throw and you got the deep cut, just picture perfect.
Discraft. The Discraft Ultrastar is the official disc of the Premier Ultimate League. Discraft, the world leader in disc sports.
Grab that Discraft. You can throw like, you know, Sammy one day. Look at that. Oh, a little shot of the carnival that happens to be in the back.
Yeah, I heard there's a fireman festival going on. There's some rides over here for after the game.
And it looks like there's also an aquatic center in case any players need to cool off. So.
And DC back to their 4-goal lead. That mountain is getting steeper and steeper for Gridlock. I'm not counting them out. I think they've made some great adjustments. They've looked really good in this quarter. But with just under 6 minutes left, it will be a tall task to score those 4 goals.
Especially how DC's offense is playing, and then there's their defense stepping up too.
Mm-hmm. A disc with Juan, who rips a massive backhand upfield.
Wow, 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 wow.
What an amazing catch.
Yeah, insane sky by Marika Korpinen, someone whose name we haven't said a ton. But I think really exciting to see a player step up in a big moment like that. I think it's, when you think about a team like Shadow that relies on their depth, that gets everybody out there on the field, that can create a kind of mindset and mentality where all players feel bought in, all players feel valued. Not to say that that's not the case on other teams, but I think that kind of structure often lends itself to players feeling ready to step up in big moments. And we see that in that last play from Korpinen. It's an incredible sky. And we've all seen Cardenas get plenty of Ds in that situation. That is not an easy catch to make. DC's lead back to 5. What do we think for Gridlock?
I mean, you just got to go 1 point at a time, right? At this point, you just need to chip away and give yourself a chance. And at this point, they do need to score quicker rather than taking the time. So we'll just watch it 1 point at a time and see how this baby ends up.
Krebs with the disc, looking for Junst. Junst with an impressive catch. A tough one, back to Krebs. Krebs for Cardenas.
You see the urgency on both sidelines. You hear DC's defensive line on the sideline just yelling out different cues, trying to slow them down, block it.
Yeah, a lot of reminders to stay tight, stay tight.
A great defense on Cardenas by Korpinen, who just had that crazy play. New York finds the reset. And huge hammer look upfield to Junst. That disc is in a good spot, but that's a hard one to read, right? That throw is coming over your head. Hard to see it coming in. Junst gets 2 hands on it, but isn't able to make the catch. DC with the disc. And they're gonna call a timeout.
Yeah, that hammer, it was to good space, but it was trailing away a bit from Junst.
Gotta shoot, right, though?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I loved it.
Yeah.
Love to see a hammer.
Gotta give it a go. The time is just pressing on them.
Yeah, and we saw a few Gridlock players come past Junst and have pat her on the back. It's great to see teammates looking out for each other. In that moment, when you play in high-pressure games like this, that kind of drop can feel really hard as a player, and I think we know, like, your teammates don't blame you for that. That's a hard catch. It's a hard position. You do your best. But really good to see the Gridlock players taking care of each other, helping each other out. It's tough to be down 5, looking at 4.5 minutes left. So good to see them sticking together. DC has put in some of their O-leaning players. We have Tyler Smith with the disc, who has not played a few points, but back out there. It looks like we've got Smith, France, Flores, Harris, Pendleton, Wallace, and I believe that is Smalling in the backfield. One of DC's, I think, most offensive-focused sets of players. Looks like DC is really looking to maintain possession here, punch this disc in, set themselves up with a 6-goal lead.
Gridlock here is set up kind of surrounding the stack, not a person defense, ready to take players who come to their space.
And we see Gridlock leaving out a fair number of players who were on that point. DC, I think, did a full wholesale sub. For New York, we have Cardenas and Krebs, and De Jesus, I think, started on, still out there. This is a moment when DC can really lean into their depth. Gridlock is looking for some of their superstar players to do a lot, and that means those players are playing a ton of points. Many of them have been on for most of this quarter. They're starting to look a little tired. You can tell they're putting in a lot of effort, but some of those players are having trouble maintaining defensive pressure with the number of points they've played. And we can see that in the big separation that Allie Wallace is able to gain for that score. DC up 6.
Great throw to space there for DC. Great effort on New York on that throw, too. All right, 2014, just under 4 minutes. 1 point at a time mentality for New York. If you're DC, let's just keep being our steady selves, keep grinding, holding, following our plan.
Yeah, New York with a pretty classic offensive set for them. As we talked about a few points ago, Krebs has played a lot this quarter. Cardenas has played a lot this quarter. De Jesus and Junst have played a lot this quarter. What does that do we think, to New York's O-line? Think about the fact that some of the players that you are looking for that all season have been the people getting the disc moving are playing point after point in a row with pretty limited rest.
Yeah, and I mean, the PUL rule is only 70 seconds between points, so even the time to catch your breath is pretty limited. I think you just have to, you know, take those deep breaths, be patient, look for open hands, and run your systems. The small ball game is working pretty well for New York most of the time.
Pretty wicked grind.
Yeah.
Oh, Cartagena pumps Junst on the first look, but then takes the harder look. Goes over her head. Krebs runs in, and that disc just bounces off her hand.
Uncharacteristic drop.
Yeah, that's a play that we tend to see Krebs make, and honestly, we've seen Krebs make, I would say, much harder catches. I wonder if some of it is just the fatigue. As we mentioned again, Krebs has barely been off the field recently. Big huck goes up. We see Krebs down. An injury called. I believe it was before the throw. If it was before the throw, the disc would come back. If the injury happened after the throw, it will stay upfield. Observer saying that it's on the catch, so the disc will actually stay upfield. Looking downfield, we can see Cartagena is the only defender deep for New York, trying to guard two players. Of Sorensen and Korpinen both deep. And the next closest player is Romero Pena, also a DC player.
Yeah, Jess Sauerbier taking a sub here, but did a great job just busting into that open space, reading that disc.
I think as we see Korpinen come off and see she's fired up, some of that fist pumping, that sense of I went out, I did what I was here to do. I'm excited to see my teammates punch it in, which they do. Jess O to Jordan Sorensen for the DC score.
DC's locked in, you know, even when New York has had a lot of these really excitable plays or great throws, DC has just maintained this kind of stoicism. And I know I got into the tail end of you all talking to the coaches, but even just like interacting with the coaches, you could just tell they were relaxed, clearly like knew what their mission was today.
And this, I'll be honest, you're in a tough spot now. If you're Gridlock, it's never over until it's over, but 7 goals in 2 minutes and 43 seconds, that, I mean, it would be an incredible thing to see that comeback, but realistically speaking, that's probably just not enough time. And one of the tough quirks about the pro system is because it's timed, you got to play it out. It's interesting, we look down, we see the players out for Gridlock are not their main O-line players. It's a lot of players who have not been on the field quite as much this game and have played mostly defense. It seems like New York is understanding the situation, understanding the direction that this game is going. Hopefully they can finish this out strong, have some clean offense, feel good about the way they play in the last few points. DC, even with their huge lead though, is still putting on a ton of pressure. They are not relenting. They're in kind of a different look. They're poachy downfield, maybe trying out something different, running through it before it will probably be their appearance in the championship game. They're now out of it, and there's a turn from Harris looking for Pressburg. DC with the disc. If you're DC, are you looking to just maintain possession here? Are you playing regular offense?
Yeah, I think hit open hands. At this point, a score doesn't hurt, but it does actually put the disc back in Gridlock's hands after the score. So it might just be a little...
I think just maybe possibly looking ahead, right? There's a minute 34, like, what do we want to do to maintain this energy and momentum to the next game? And a huge hammer layout score could definitely do that.
Yeah, as we talk about that, make it easy, hit open hands, Annalise Peters has other ideas, turns and looks at that cross-field hammer shot. which Lori is able to make a layout catch to secure. I do love seeing the continued intensity from Shadow in this game. Looking at Lori making that catch, you can tell that they are locked in, right? As long as they are playing hard, they're doing their best. Doesn't matter if they're up 1 or if they're up 6, DC is fully committed to this game. And I think knowing that they're gonna play again tomorrow, or that it's extremely likely that they're gonna play again tomorrow, maintaining that energy is huge, right? These last few points, even if they're not necessarily the most important to the outcome of this game, is how DC is setting themselves up for the next game.
And I mean, like, these are also opportunities to, like, grow your process, right? So even if the outcome might not be what New York's looking for, you can still get players to be in these situations, to play against DC that's playing intensely. DC, too, play against New York that's, like, scrappy and just wanting to, like, end their season on a high note. So even though these points might not lead to a different outcome, there's still a lot of value that you can pull from them.
Finley catches the disc, centers up to Krebs. We're back to having our pretty standard New York O-line. Finley finds Cardenas, who takes a big shot looking for Junst, but Sorensen is under that. Something I've noticed about New York's deep looks this game is that they've often been looking at players who are open, but players who are already very deep. New York has some excellent throwers. They're able to put that disc pretty far out, but they've struggled, I think, to put the disc in front of the player trying to catch it.
Hopefully just some cramping, still unfortunate, very uncomfortable.
Here we go. Lisa's disc. Jackie's the reset.
Just all out on the field. Just so much effort throughout the whole game.
Yeah, Cardenas coming off. And again, as we mentioned, Cardenas is one of those players who's played a lot of points for New York. Hopefully just cramping, but with how frequently Cardenas has been on the field, a cramp at this point is not the most surprising thing. DC picking up the disc. They've got about a minute left. Kyver with the disc. Kyver up to Dane. Dane finds Murphy in the middle of the field. Murphy back to Dane. Dane to Sorensen. Nice catch by Sorensen. Sorensen back to Juan. Juan on the sideline. Juan finds Dane. Dane to Murphy.
You hear the DC coaches yelling, maintain, maintain. They want to hold this possession.
And I think, as we were mentioning before, even if this particular point doesn't matter a ton, thinking forward for DC to their next game, it feels powerful to end with the disc in your hands, to feel fully in control, that you dictated those final plays. We will see if DC tries to put up some kind of buzzer beater shot as we get close to the end, or if they are looking just to maintain possession, kind of the ultimate equivalent of holding the ball at the end of a basketball game. Disc up to Sorensen. Sorensen back to Dane. Dane finds Murphy. Murphy back to Dane. DC seems very content to just hold the disc.
5 seconds.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll see another throw.
There you have it, folks. DC Shadow taking it 22-14.
And Shadow continuing their dominant performances all season with another game where they are squarely in control start to finish. Great effort by Gridlock, but Shadow remains undefeated.
Yeah, a ton of heart by Gridlock. They had a wonderful season, and you know, this was the first time where they had a lot of their pieces all on the table at the same once, but they were definitely in it, grinding. Both teams just really good, and DC came out on top.
Yeah, and coming up next, we do have one more semifinal. We've got Indy Red playing against Raleigh Radiance. And tomorrow we'll be back again for the championship game with DC playing against one of those two teams.
All right, all these teams have come out to play. They're ready to show what they got in the Midwest. All right, well, we want want to say thank you for joining us. We can't wait for you to also check in our semifinal and final. I'm Emily Langland. It's been a pleasure. It's getting to see all these gifted athletes showcase their abilities.
Yeah, thanks for watching.